If you'd like to talk about your own Bigfoot encounter, or if you're looking for help from a Bigfoot investigator in your area, email me at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. No Sasquatch were harmed in the recording of this podcast.
Hi, this is Lori Hood. I'm from East Texas. I'm a Bigfoot researcher.
Lori, I don't even want to say welcome to Bigfoot Crossroads. Welcome to my home. Did you ever think over 20 years ago that we would find ourselves sitting in my house in Tulsa, Oklahoma, talking about Bigfoot?
No. In fact, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have thought I'd be sitting in your living room talking about Bigfoot on Bigfoot Crossroads.
You're one of the, very first people I ever met.
Yeah.
Very first. And you your Bigfoot age is a little bit older than mine, but not by much.
Right. When I started, I was about 43.
Oh, geez. Younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're 47.
Yes. Yes, let's stick with that.
So, why Bigfoot?
Well, exactly. Why?
Yeah.
Well, I guess it really started in 1998. I was living in a community on the Lake Sam Rayburn.
Yeah.
And it was a camp community, so most of the houses, no one lived in them all year round. It was just they would come from Houston and stay there. And there was wonderful trails all through the woods. It was national forest all the way around. And then through the woods was the lake. And so anyway, we had gotten a brand new pontoon boat. And I was working at the paper mill then and working southern swing shift. I worked evenings that night, and I wanted to go try out this boat. So they met me at the boat ramp about 10:30 at night when I got off my shift. And we're out there until about 4 in the morning. We're not catching anything. It's like in August.
Mm-hmm.
My husband and father-in-law, they were very hard of hearing. And I heard some coyotes blast off, and I said, wow, do you hear those coyotes? And they said, no. Well, then right after that, I heard something I'd never heard before in my life. And I have camped and fished all my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never heard anything like it. It started out as a very deep howl and then finished up as a roar, like a lion roar.
Wow.
And then everything just went quiet. There were no coyotes, frogs, crickets. Everything just went dead quiet.
Where was it coming? Was it like across the lake from you?
No,
or
it
on
was
your side.
Right, it was on our side, and it was just, I don't really know where, it was a distance.
Uh-huh.
But they didn't hear it, and I just got scared.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Yeah, but it was like I thought the thing could come and get us.
Yeah.
And whatever it was really big. But it was a ways away. But I was like, let's go. And pontoon boats they can go fast, but it was like
not fast
5
enough.
miles an hour. They were just just paddling. Almost could have got down there and paddled faster with my hands, but it was like I kept looking behind us, expecting to see something running along the bank, because we weren't that far from the bank. And when we got to the parking lot, of course, it's 4 in the morning, and when they got there, it was like 3 in the afternoon. So the truck is way up at the top of the parking lot.
Sure.
And guess who has to get out by herself and go get the truck?
Oh, geez.
So I'm walking across that parking lot and I'm looking and I'm just terrified. Well, it was so funny. We finally got home and everything. And then I realized that, oh my gosh, where the parking lot was and where I live was closer to where I heard it than the parking lot.
Oh, wow.
So I said, that was just right down at the creek. But I eventually kind of forgot about it. But we had a lot of things going on around the house. And I just thought, because it was Native American burial grounds at one time around there.
I mean, sure. What else would you be living on top of?
Yeah. I was thinking, well, it's probably ghosts.
You were into the paranormal first.
Yes, I was a paranormal investigator for a while. And it was just for hobby, fun,
Right.
It was that adrenaline junkie thing. And so anyway, that's just what I assumed it was. Walking around outside in the pitch dark, could hear something walking around outside. Strange sounds coming from the woods, strange vocalizations.
Yeah.
The feeling like you're being watched, that kind of stuff.
Just the whole checklist.
Yeah, the whole checklist, but I didn't know about the Bigfoot checklist.
Right.
About that time, we got a new computer. And we all used to CB. In fact, that's how I met my husband. Mm-hmm. We started CBing on the radio instead of like trying to shoot skip with Australia. Australia had come on the computer.
Yeah.
And for some reason, it just lost its luster for me, and I was bored. So I started venturing around this Pal Talk, and Pal Talk it's still around, actually. And I was looking through these different rooms, and I found this one that was called Gulf Coast Bigfoot Research Organization.
The Bro.
Yes. And this is where I met Matt. But at first, I didn't have a microphone, so I just listened. Mm-hmm. Well, I finally got up the courage, and well, at first, actually, I was laughing at them because they believed in Bigfoot, and I totally did not at all.
Right.
And so then I thought about that vocal. So I typed in, I heard a vocal once, and Dallas Gilbert played a recording that was exactly what I heard.
Wow.
And to this day, I have never heard that recording again.
Was it something, Dallas Gilbert is no longer with us.
Right.
But he was a researcher
May rest
in
in
Ohio.
peace, yes.
Was this vocal recorded in Ohio?
I'm not sure. I don't remember that part because that was like 22 years ago.
Yeah.
But I just know I just felt hot and cold and sick, and it was the realization
that stomach sinking moment.
Yes, and all the check mark things, you know. Well, do you have this? Do you have this? I had everything, and I was just like, this cannot be. This cannot be. So I became interested in the subject, and of course I became obsessed,
Like a lot of people do.
Yes. I was one of those that was completely head over heels in love with Bigfoot, trying to find, I actually wanted to prove it to myself. So I was out in the woods every day and walking around, walking the trails.
Your trail walks, going to the lake. I remember I used to always look forward to hearing the latest trail walk story. You had some pretty amazing things happening that started filling in a lot of puzzle pieces for our entire group.
Well, I'm glad to know that because I felt like what I was doing at the time was a little bit cutting edge because there wasn't a lot of women doing it.
No.
And so I started going down these trails, and I would either smell urine or the urine smell would move, or I'd walk into that wall that, eventually, but I never saw anything or heard anything. And eventually, one day I was walking down the trail, and I always went the same way to the trail, And when I walked into the woods, I would hear a knock.
Yeah.
And when I walked out of the woods, left the woods to go back to my house, I would hear a knock.
See, you were the first person that I ever talked to and heard talk about wood knocks, and specifically whenever you enter the woods, they knock, and whenever you leave the woods, they knock.
Right.
Kind of painting a picture that they're communicating that a human is in the area.
At this place, they knocked a lot. You
Yeah.
know, I would hear 3 knocks. You know, I hear 1 knock, and then over here I would hear a knock, and then back over here I'd hear a knock. And it was just crazy because you don't really encounter that too much nowadays. It's like,
Yeah.
unless you get into an area that people haven't messed with them very much. But I feel like that's something they don't even do anymore, hardly.
Do you remember, in hindsight, hearing knocks before you were?
Yes, but I didn't know what that was.
Huh.
I noticed it especially in the fall.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe it's the sap hardening or,
Yeah.
I didn't,
I remember you used to do a lot of recording.
Yes.
Still do.
Yes.
And we would talk about, I think it was acorns falling on your carport outside. And,
Yes.
But it sounds distinctly different, especially whenever you can play it on a recording and listen to it over and over and over.
Yes. Yes.
You figure out that you can tell the difference between different materials hitting one another, and there's a distinct sound to wood on wood as opposed to everything else.
Well, I have actually got a recording where acorn fell off and hit a house, and then hit the carport, rolled down, and bounced, and it made like a knock, knock, knock. And then I got a wood knock right
Something
after that.
answered
So from out in the woods, they thought it was a knock.
Wow.
And they were responding. And but yeah, I did record. I want to tell you all this. I had a little Radio Shack recorder and a mic, and I stuck it in my window.
Yeah.
And every 30 to 45 minutes, depending on what kind of cassette tape I had, I would have to flip that sucker. So I had I set my alarm, and I would wake up, flip it, go back to sleep for 30 minutes, wake up, put a new one in, and I could almost just do it without waking up.
Due diligence.
And then on my way to, I was attending college at the time, it was about a 20-minute drive, so I would, on the way there and on the way back, I would listen.
Yeah.
Stick it in, I had a cassette player in my car, so I would just do it that way, blasting. And but I got some pretty amazing stuff, but it's horrible quality because it was just a little stock mic, and there was an AC unit right by the house, right there. But I had a lot of, it sounded like something coming up to my window.
Yeah.
And so I, was wondering, I was recording a lot coming up to my window. And so I tried the game camera thing. Well, back then it was just a roll of film in there, and and the whole thing was shot up. I'd run 20 miles to town to get it developed, find out that it was all shots of the ground because the game camera would be flipped over on its face.
Yeah.
Or sticks being thrown in front of it. That kind of thing. So that was useless. And to this day, I feel game cameras are useless because I think they know, can see the infrared.
Right.
So anyway, let me get back to where I was going. When I was going down these trails, one day I noticed that there was little animal skulls, like little squirrel skulls, possum skull. Well, I'm guessing that's what they were.
Right.
And so I pick them up and look at them and set them back down. I didn't want to take any skulls home, And so then the next day, I come down there and the animal skulls were gone because I actually thought I would go back and get them.
Yeah.
And they were gone. Well, then the next day I go down there and there's this beautiful blue heron feather. It was probably a foot long. It was just gorgeous. And I said, wow, I like this. And I always pinned my hair up, so I just stuck it in my hair. And the next day I went down, there was an eagle feather. And this continued.
Yeah.
And I had a round kind of a decorative wreath thing on my porch. And when I would get in, I would just, when I started to realize that I think I was being gifted, at the time, this was 22, 21 years ago,
Yeah.
gifting wasn't a thing
No.
that people talked about. And it was kind of like, well, it wasn't as extreme as like the portal talk, but it still was like, oh, no, they're not. They're just dumb apes.
It was still very controversial.
Right. But I was thinking there's something out here, of course, because I've been smelling it.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I think there's something leaving me something. So I started just making a big deal about it.
Yeah.
You know, smelling it, fanning my face, and then
Putting on a show.
Yeah, putting on a show that I really loved it, saying thank you and all this kind of stuff. So I started really collecting some feathers. Well, my neighbor, he saw me. He said, girl, you better get that stuff in the house. You have got probably 10 eagle feathers. That's enough to put you away the rest of your life.
You're not allowed to have those.
No. And I said, well, he goes, where'd you get those? And I would tell him I find them in the same place.
Yeah.
All the feathers were always at the end of the trail right at the lake. And at first I thought, well, it's just we're all, But, I'm going to tell you something. I don't find feathers like that now, anywhere.
Nobody does.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're listening right now, just think about how often you even see a bird feather. And then imagine that there's a place that you go to every day, and damn near every time you go there, there's a new feather laying in the same spot.
Exactly. And these were big feathers.
Yeah.
These weren't like little blue jay feathers or whatever. These were great big feathers. And so it just broke my heart to put them in the house because I felt like, well, at first I knew I was being watched because my house was directly across from the woods.
Yeah.
And I always felt like I was being watched, but I also had a very creepy PSTD veteran that lived in the neighborhood, and he was always showing up on his four-wheeler, and he always made me uncomfortable, and I always kind of thought it was him.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that back in the day. Are you sure it's not people, like a peeper coming up to your window and stuff?
Yes, but I would always feel it like at dark, and I would have to close my windows because I just felt like I was on view. And I didn't have any houses directly across the street to block the view from the woods.
Right.
I was very uncomfortable about that. Well, during this time, this is when I met you and Bear and Vicky and Dan and Kumbo and all of you, and we all started going places and doing things. This is when we went to, I believe, I may have had my first sighting before Boykin Spring, but I can't remember.
I think it was after.
After?
I think so.
Okay.
Because I think it was after we met, and I met you on the return trip to Boykin.
Okay.
How did Boykin come to be?
Well, that was the thing. I really wanted to invite everybody down.
Yeah.
And I wanted a cool place to go. But I didn't really want a whole bunch of people tromping through my little research area there.
Right.
But I wanted to find a cool place to take them that was different. And so I started looking on the topo map, which Bear taught us all about topo maps. And I saw this one place. I said, wow, this looks really good. And so I went down there, and sure enough, there was this guy from the paper mill when I no longer worked at the paper mill. It shut down. But he was my old union steward, and he was just a party animal, pothead, kind of hippie guy, long hair. Yeah. But he was the camp host.
Huh.
So I got there, and of course, I told him why I was there. I was looking for a good place to Bigfoot research. Well, he just fell off his chair, legs in the air, everything. He was always exaggerated anyway. But I said, no, I'm serious. And so he showed me where the sawmill was and the dead end road and all of that. And while we were down there, these two rangers come up. And I think they were more looking at him than they were looking at me. But, he had to throw me under the bus. He said to him, she's a Bigfoot researcher. And, back then, it was before Finding Bigfoot, and you just didn't come out and say that. It was like people just look at you like, well, the one ranger never even looked at me. Well, the other one looked at me, and his eyes were just kind of glittering. And it was like he knew. And I just got that feeling that he knew they were there. But he didn't say anything either. But at the end, I just wanted to slap that guy, the host, and say, shut up, you're just burying yourself. He's over there. Blah, 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 blah. He was really trying to take the heat off himself because he was loaded. Yeah. He was baked. And he just wanted to take the heat off himself, but he was just making things worse. I just wanted to kick him and go, be quiet, just shut up. But anyway, the ranger gave me a beautiful laminated county map. And it was a topo map. It had all the...
That was your big map that you had?
That was that big map.
Wow.
So I had that, and I was just like, I'm in heaven now. This is something I can take with me everywhere. Had it up in my computer room and everything. Well, that's how I found Boykin Springs. And
I never heard that story before.
Really?
I just, because at the time you don't think to ask these things.
Yes.
And now Boykin Springs, the Dead End Road, are famous in the Bigfoot world.
I know.
It's a destination for people to go to now to look for Bigfoot.
I know. And it was like a unknown jewel.
Yeah.
It was virgin territory, basically, because when we went down there and Bear and Kumbo were doing their calls, these critters just came, and they had that sighting in front of us, you know. They were the lead car, and there was two in the road, and one went one way and one went the other. And they got that siren call on recording. I wish I had that.
Lots of stuff happened.
Lots of stuff happened. We could see them spotlighting through the woods, the lead car, and we could see something running.
Wow.
And that was like my first, I guess it wasn't really a sighting. I don't call that a sighting, but it was just a shadow, basically, running through there. But that night, I remember the very first night at the Dead End. It was like when they did their calls, it was like the whole woods just exploded with weird vocals, like the mutated vocals, where they talk about, they start off sounding like a rooster and then they end up sounding like a donkey. That kind of stuff was going on. And I remember just standing there in awe. That was the most iconic moment.
And this was still, we're talking years and years before Bobo was calling on Finding Bigfoot. Nobody was doing calls trying to lure Bigfoot to them. It was just
two old boys that just knew how to do these calls, who had been raised up around them. And, we respected them greatly.
Yeah.
Because of their knowledge.
Yeah.
And they could call them up.
And it all sounded like bullshit.
Yeah.
It all sounded like bullshit, but then you go out into the woods and you witness it working.
Yes. But they also had that sense about them. When it's time to get out of there, it's time to get out of there.
Yeah.
I didn't realize at the time that some of the calls they were using tended to get an aggressive response or territorial response.
It seemed that way for sure. I don't know what they were saying, but whatever it was, it pissed off the Bigfoot.
Yes. So anyway, here he is. here's Bear. He's saying, oh, we got to get out of here. And everybody just does what they're supposed to. They get loaded up in their car, but not me, stupid me. I'm going, why? It's just getting good. Why? I'm just, and that's the whole way I was back then. I was so stubborn and just so wanted to stay and experience. Well, let's see what happens.
Right.
I think from where Bear and Kumbo were, there was a higher standard of aggression.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I didn't really know this about Texas Bigfoot, but they tend to be, in the eastern part of Texas, they're very docile. They bluff charge, they make a lot of racket and growl and all that kind of stuff, but they're very non-aggressive.
Never
They're
heard of them
passive.
reaching out and snatching somebody up.
But, of course, these guys didn't know that. They were just, they felt responsible for everybody that was there.
Right.
And there was quite a few people there. So here I am, I could see Bear. He was just pointing his finger, get your, get in that car and go. And so we did. We all left and we went on up the road to where the sawmill was.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I didn't know at this time that Bear almost got.
Right.
I did hear a lot of movement coming from his side of the woods towards us.
Yeah.
Locomotive type, But I did not realize, because I was so novice, I had no idea how dangerous all that was until later.
Yeah.
And didn't realize that it was that close. But this is what I heard later, and I'm like, wow. I just feel silly that I didn't know. And I'm over there. I could have got him killed or strangled or knot on his head, a Dallas Gilbert held upside down, and boom, I didn't know what. But anyway, we got down to the other end, and what I thought was really strange is we had that extreme excitement, but we were experiencing infrasound big time down there at that dead end road.
Yeah.
So we got up to the sawmill gate. Well, I look over there, we're all blah, 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 just wired for sound.
Right.
We've all had an amazing experience. I look over there, and Bear and Kumbo are sound asleep.
Just drained.
They are knocked out. Now, I know they made a long trip and stuff, but after what happened down there, how can they be asleep?
I mean,
it makes no sense to me, other than they got blasted but good with that infrasound.
Multiple people, including both of them, reportedly, I wasn't there, I have to, add that asterisk on it, saw an entire group of Bigfoot run across the road through the woods. Then all of this stuff happens. As you guys are getting back in the car, multiple witnesses said that one came and tried to grab Bear as he's crawling into the truck.
Yes.
You get out of there, and they just fall asleep just a half mile down the road.
Yes.
No way in the world.
No way in the world, but
No
that's
way.
Exactly what happened. And
Yeah.
it was just, of course, Kelly Mattingly, she's like zoned out.
Yeah.
She always got zoned out by infrasound.
She was very in tune, we'll say.
Yes.
Especially whenever it came to infrasound. She was very sensitive to it.
True.
Extremely. She would pick up on them being around before anybody.
Right.
Except for, of course, Kumbo's dog, Bo.
Yes.
And then these things were coming up to your house.
Yes. So the whole time and of course this concerned Bear and Kumbo quite a bit, and they were telling me, stay out of the woods, stay out of the woods. Well, I just couldn't. I said, I can't learn anything or ever see one if I don't go out there where they are. And even though it was scary for me, the more and more I went out there, the more and more I bumped up my not so afraid, became so much more comfortable.
Yeah.
And I kind of got to where I knew what they were going to do, sort of, eventually. Now, this is on down the road, but I kind of knew how far I could push them.
Didn't you have a neighbor that saw one?
Well, my neighbor was out in the garden. When I first started, his garden was right across the street from my house, and I'd have to walk right by it to go out into the woods, to hit the trail to go to the lake.
Right.
And he had been seeing me going, and one day he was out in his garden, and he was a young guy. And he said, What are you doing out there? And I said, oh, I'm just walking around and stuff like that. He goes, you really need to be careful. You don't know what is really out in them woods.
Buddy, I most certainly do.
I said, what do you mean by that? And he would never answer me.
Yeah.
He wouldn't tell me because it was so taboo then,
Yeah.
you know. And then later on, he actually became a research partner with me. And then I come to find out he knew about him ever since he was a child, which that's another story. But anyway, it was Labor Day weekend, 2001, and this is 1 year. Well, I started in May of 2000, Bigfoot researching, and then it was Labor Day weekend, so it was it was a little over a year.
Yeah.
I was on the phone with this guy from Magnolia, Texas. And he was one of those kind of people that he was like, I was a control freak and he was a control freak. And we just constantly were arguing.
What's that like?
Oh my gosh. It was just like, I'm right. No, I'm right. You know. So I was on the phone with him and it was about midnight. And, of course, the neighborhood was packed with people, but everybody had pretty much, parked their four-wheelers and they had all gone to bed. And I'm out there, I let my dog out, and I'm hearing the growling. And I'm thinking, well, the lake was really low, and maybe there's a boat out there hung up on a sandbar. Because it sounded like it was consistent. It was like, like that, just over and over and over. And I said, that could be somebody hung up on a sandbar, just trying to get off, know. And so anyway, I listened to it for a while, and the longer I listened to it, and I'm arguing too, I kept hearing it. It started to get louder. It started to get a little more forceful, and it was coming directly across the street behind the garden, and there was a cane patch. It was coming directly from there. And I said, there is something, I think, in the cane patch growling at me. I don't know what it could be. Well, he said, go over to your boat and get that spotlight, that 3 million candle, So I did. And he said, pan the wood line, pan the wood line. So I did. I panned the wood line, and when I got all the way over, there was a trailer house, kind of catty corner to us. When I got over to the trailer house, I noticed movement in the outer ring of that spotlight. It was like one of those older spotlights that had rings. They had the bright ring in the middle, and then it fades out. Well, that very edge of it, I saw something move, so I jerked it back, and that's when I saw him. And he was standing by a pine tree, and he had about 6 foot of yopon in front of him, but I could see from the chest up.
Wow.
He was very... He closed his eyes, ducked his head down, turned sideways, and ducked down. Just like that. It was that quick.
Yeah.
It was just 3 seconds. And I was just like, oh, my God. I was like completely, I don't even know that I couldn't say I was horrified, because it wasn't because it was ugly or terrifying or anything like that. It was because, oh my God, it really is real.
Yeah.
Because even though I found evidence, I had recordings, I'd found footprints, I'd found a fish that had a big, ultra large human bite out of it.
I remember that.
And just all this kind of stuff, I still deep down in my heart did not believe they existed.
You're just pretending at that point.
Yeah, at that point, I think I was just having fun.
Yeah.
Well, I absolutely know that I went into a small state of shock because I just lost time for about 2 or 3 hours. And then I texted Kelly, and she came up, and we went over there. That's where we discovered, I noted where his head was on the tree so I could later measure. I don't know how in the world I managed to do that, considering it was just that quick.
Yeah.
But I did. And when we went to measure it, she was so short, we had to get a PVC pipe and put a hat on it. She had to raise it. And I said, there it is, right there. And then we measured it.
Yeah.
He was 11 foot tall.
Jeez.
Built like an NBA basketball player.
Yeah.
His hair was real slick, not long, shaggy, and he wasn't muscle bound. He was just, well, he was very toned.
Right.
But he wasn't like what I've been hearing about.
Right. Not some big gorilla-like thing.
No. And even his face seemed, I don't know, it wasn't just real prominent features. He didn't have a sagittal crest.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, I don't remember seeing ears. I know there was probably ears,
right.
But I don't remember seeing them.
I remember my first sighting that I had through the night vision. Afterwards, going back and replaying it in my head over and over, one of the things that stood out to me was it didn't look like what people portray Bigfoot looking like in like artist drawings and on TV and in movies and everything. It wasn't what I was expecting, and that was one of the biggest shocking things about it. Was it didn't look like what they supposedly looked like, but at the same time it did.
And so we went over there, and we discovered there was a very worn place right next to that pine tree where I saw him. So that's who I believe had been watching me. And the smell was foul. I'd never smelled before or since anything as horrible as the smell that was in that area. And it was like a combination of 4 things: puke, excrement, urine, and musk. And it just was horrible. It permeated the entire area right there around that pine tree. But yet we couldn't find anything that would account for that smell.
Right.
No scat or anything. We couldn't even really, going around sniffing, even locate where it was the most strongest. It just was in the area. And it only lasted the day.
Huh.
And then by that evening, it was just nearly gone.
Now, at this same location, you eventually moved into another location.
Right.
But at this one of the things that, in hindsight, again, that really stands out to me, the dog stuff. Mm-hmm. You had a little dog named Cookie.
Yes.
And
little Chihuahua mix.
Before anybody ever talked about Bigfoot having a language or talking or anything like that.
Right.
The farthest we had gotten at that point was the idea that they might mimic animals.
Right.
Or they might mimic, a call that somebody does or something like that.
Right.
You got to hear, you recorded something saying your dog's name.
Yes.
Can you kind of tell that story?
Well, the computer area was right by the back door, and there was a doggy door there. Mm-hmm. And she would fly out that door whenever she would hear anything. And she would get back there in the backyard, and I was always scared to death that the Bigfoot were going to get her.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that she actually chased one off one time. I thought, well, that's crazy. But I wouldn't know that except for the recordings. You can hear that. And but this one particular time, I was not wanting to get up from my chair, so I'm sitting in there just yelling her name, and telling her to get back into the house. And then I get up and I open the door, and I'm calling her, and she finally comes back in. Well, the whole time this is going on, I'm recording, always recording. always. And I had that recorder going. Well, the next day I listened to it, and I hear her out there barking, and I hear me calling, and then I hear this voice say, "Cookie, cookie."
Yeah.
Just like that.
It was so weird.
Yeah, cookie, cookie. And I thought, and she stopped barking, and she went,
Yeah.
like she knew him. But, or her, or it, or whatever it was. I'm thinking, this is nuts, because I hear about people, their dogs getting killed.
All the time.
Everything. Well, then I found out, you know, through the 22 years, I've heard that if you really show a lot of love to your animals and just demonstrate that outside where they can observe you, then they know these animals are precious to you. But a dog that sits on a chain and they hardly even go over and pet it, that's the animal I feel like is going to get in trouble.
Get got.
Yeah. Because they think, well, they don't care about them anyway, and I'm tired of them barking at me. You know, I don't know.
Right.
But I just know that I've worried about my animals, but yet I always make sure if they're in the area, which they usually are, just and I followed that advice. But that cookie.
Yeah. I had come to visit you one time, me and Chad, and you had another little Chihuahua. And after we left, tragedy struck.
Yes. You know, the little dog got out in the road and got hit, and we had one neighbor that drive like their butt was on fire.
Bad out of hell.
Yeah. And they hit him. Well, when I went out there and buried him, it just broke my heart, because he was just a little baby, you know. Even though he was grown, he was just a little tiny Chihuahua. And it just broke my heart, so I'm just out there boo-hooing and digging a hole and burying him and all of that. And I feel like that they were watching me. And that night that I recorded, I got all kinds of vocals that were, I don't know how to explain it. To me, they were comforting to me. But it was just, I got more vocals that night than I had gotten. And
they were different types of vocals than what you would normally get.
Yes. It's almost as if, personally, I think they were consoling me.
Yeah.
Let me know that they felt my pain, or I know that sounds insane, but
does it though?
Yeah, because I never heard it before or since then.
It had emotion behind it.
Yes.
You could feel the emotion behind it.
Yes, it wasn't really a wailing.
Right.
But it was kind of a sing-song. There was a lot of sing-song audio I would record.
Which is something we used to talk about all the time and get recordings of, and now people don't talk about it. You don't hear about people getting these rhythmic and song-like vocalizations recorded that just... I don't have any explanation.
I think it is a part of their culture, but they just don't. I feel like right now the Bigfoot feel like they're under the gun, and they are losing their habitat. And then you've got 1 million people looking for them now. Back when I was doing it, there may have been 500 or 200. Yeah. Now you've got everybody out doing calls. I can't go to a public campground without some kid out there doing a Bigfoot howl.
Whacking a tree with a stick.
Yeah, whacking a tree with a stick. You can't trust anything you record in a campground.
What blows my mind is being able to walk into just about any store and buying Bigfoot items, whatever it is, a sticker or a window decal or a mug, or it's everywhere. Christmas ornaments.
Yes.
And back then it was like, if you got caught with a Bigfoot sticker on your car, like you knew that was a researcher. That wasn't just a person. Like you, and now if you see it, everybody's got a Bigfoot sticker on their car. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. It's so weird.
I know. It not only has changed public awareness, but it has changed them. Because I know that when I first started researching in those woods outside that camp community. I had all kinds of stuff. It was just constant. And then by the time I left, it had slowed way down. It's almost like they changed their mode of operation.
Well, do you think so? One of the things that we used to talk about and do is we would go into an area and we would do the calls or we would do the knocks or something to get them to come in.
Right.
Use their curiosity against them.
Right.
But we always knew, hey, this is a one-time thing. Like after we do this, they're going to know it's us. They're going to know it's not another Bigfoot.
That's right.
It's a group of humans messing with them. They're going to get real quiet, and that's it. But we'll have fun in the meantime. Mm-hmm. But now, like you said, you've got
you go anywhere and
Joe
do a
Blow,
call.
some kid doing it all over the place. Do you think maybe Bigfoot's thinking like they know about us?
They know about us.
We have to hide even more now.
Yes. Because I'm going to tell you, we used to be able to go out and do calls. Mm-hmm. Anybody could do a call and get some kind of response.
Yeah.
My friend Crystal,
yeah,
she did a call, and it was like a bawling cow call, and we got surrounded. Yeah. That's the kind of thing that would, any kind of call at all would bring them in.
Yeah.
But now you do a call, you get nothing. And if you do get something, they'll just come up. They don't respond. They'll just usually send one to go check you out, and it's just real quiet, and it's just not doing much. And so, it's kind of the research back then and the research now is like night and day.
Yeah. You mentioned Crystal. I wanted to ask you about that. You used to kind of get scolded because you were stubborn, and
I
everybody was like
hard-headed.
Everybody was always, Lori, you can't go out there by yourself. You can't do it. So,
no gun, nothing.
Yeah, you and Crystal hooked up, and now you're not alone. So now you guys are going to some of the most insane places. That bridge that you guys went to is still to this day the darkest place I have ever seen in my life. That place is so scary for no reason. Yes. It's just pitch black dark.
You're talking about what we called it was land between the bridges.
Yes.
Yes. That's where we did get surrounded. And yes, it was extremely dark there, and it was an unusual spot.
It was.
I found it on the topo map, and it was like, well, let's try this spot. And I think we had been there one time, and we had like stuff, could hear far off vocals, or we'd hear something moving around. We'd see some eyes shine. We had just low level activity, but we did have activity. But then when she did that call, and
you guys were recording audio at the time.
Recording. There were two vehicles. It was me and Crystal and Gerald, her son, and then there was Clyde Riley and his girlfriend. And they had their recording equipment out on a tripod. Mine was just up on top of the car. Well, when she did that call, it was the other side of the tape. So I don't know that it was even her call that did it. Now, she did say, well, they didn't like my call. I said, nope. But I don't actually, because that is a long time. 45 minutes is a long response time. So I don't think they even knew we were there, as we had been there a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And we were really quiet, just milling around, not shining flashlights or anything. We were just really quiet, whispering, listening. And all of a sudden we hear, like, on both sides of this place, it was a creek that had a bridge, a bridge over each creek, but there was a spot, just a little area between the two creeks. And then on both sides of that was open pasture road.
Yeah.
And then more woods on each side. Well, we heard what sounded like a howl, a very good howl. And we recorded this. And within 45 seconds, they were on top of us. They were to the south of us, they were to the east of us, and they were coming from the west. And it was just like, woo. And you could just tell that it was getting too intense. And so we loaded up we got into our vehicles. Of course, I got my mic cord all hung up in the window, and I'm cussing and banging around, and I had to do a lot of editing on that part because it was like ear splitting.
Right.
Because I'm banging that mic around. But even once we rolled up the windows, you could still hear them out there.
Yeah, that recording was terrifying to listen to.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, you could hear them off in the distance, and you can hear them getting closer and closer and closer. And of course, I can't remember exactly, but it's like a minute and a half or something there was a very short amount of time. It may have even been less than that from the first howl until they're on top of you.
45 seconds.
45 seconds. That was my second guess.
Yeah. Well, from where we thought that first howl was on the other side of the pasture in those woods.
Yeah.
And that was probably a mile.
A mile.
So in that short amount of time, it was almost like they were not centering on us. I think we got right in the middle of a rumble.
It was weird.
Some kind of a territorial war, something, and we were just in the wrong place or the right place at the right time, I guess.
I mean, because at the end, the vocalizations are loud.
Yes.
Right on top of you.
Right on top. And they're all screaming, banshee screams.
Yeah.
Some of them sound like coyotes, but I know it's not coyotes and it's almost a chorus of howling and roaring. And it was very loud, and then all of a sudden it just stopped. Well, the other couple are in the other truck, and I can hear them arguing about who's going to get out and get that.
Yeah, who's going to go get the microphone?
Who's going to get the microphone? And I don't know who won on that.
Nobody.
But eventually they did, and we eased on out of there, but our adrenaline was so high that we didn't sleep for hours after that. It was just incredible.
You guys went back there several times.
Yes.
And it seems like, if memory serves me right, that's one of the places, I believe, the first time where we talked about recording something and you got a vocalization recorded that nobody heard at the time.
Oh, that was it, the hoof.
Yeah, kind of like a dog huff sound.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I think that was at Boykin Springs. Yeah, we were there, and Dan had just done a call. Dan Rickey, just on a call. And where the recorder was at, it picked up his call and everything, but we were all in a different area from where the recorder was at. And the recorder picked up a big woof like that.
That should have been audible. Like,
yes.
You guys should have heard it.
Yes.
But didn't.
Nope.
And that seemed to happen a lot.
Yes. I've also gotten EVPs.
Yeah.
I've got several EVPs and just random stuff that shouldn't even, like we went to, it was me and Luke and Billy Simmons and his boys and another girl, and we camped out on the Sulphur River. And that place was, that was the place that had all the weird dolls and Halloween decorations and like creepy stuff all through it. But that place was there was something else there besides Bigfoot. We did find some great sign, and we had actually had a tree branch break and fall a tree broke over while we were standing there with our coffee cups talking on camera, and that kind of thing. But we got EVPs that said like, one of them said, yeah, like that. I can't remember what the other one was, but it was something weird like, hi. That's what it was.
How creepy.
Hi. like that. It was almost like they were whispering into the microphone.
Yeah.
But I know there was nobody over there
Right.
because it was back behind our tents off into the woods, and we were at the campfire. You could hear us talking, because we weren't that far away, but it wasn't anybody there.
So you end up moving
Ended up moving.
to
Ended
Booger
up
Hill.
wrecking my marriage because Bigfoot was more important than my husband. And so I ended up moving to Booger Hill. And I decided I was going to try it different. Well, number one, I was having a lot of issues, I felt like, with the government watching me. And I know that sounds just extremely paranoid.
Well, I mean, you experienced some things.
Yes, it seemed like everywhere I went in those last, between 2003 and 2004, everywhere I went, a helicopter would show up. And it would always be a black helicopter. Well, I assume it was black. There were never any lights on it. And it would always, fly right over us really slow. Sometimes they'd stand and hover. At this particular time, I would have it from but once I moved to Booger Hill, it seemed like it slowed down a lot. But then I slowed down a lot.
Yeah.
I slowed down, and I decided to have a different attitude about my research because I felt like I changed the ones that over in the old place by just being there all the time. I was constantly, and I
What
felt
year
like
was it whenever you moved?
2004.
2004. So you were 4 or 5 years into it at this point. So a different person.
Different person.
In life and with Bigfoot.
Yes.
Did you pick Booger Hill on purpose?
Well, actually, my ex-husband was supposed to move there. And he hated it, and I was like, I love this place. Oh, it needed so much work. It was grown up. No one had lived there for 2 years.
I thought you were insane. I thought you had lost your mind at that point.
And anyone would think I'd lost my mind.
Yeah.
And it's so far out and away from everybody. And everybody thought, you're going to be scared to death to live out here by yourself. But I wasn't. I loved it there. And I still do. I can't leave. I will die out there most likely because I can't leave that place. But when I first moved in, I was having a lot of activity and a lot of things happening. But I was trying to act like, well, I don't know what y'all are. That's what I was trying to act like, so that maybe they would even try harder to get my attention. But it was kind of hard when you have Bigfoot people coming to your house, and I tried to do things differently, but mainly I think I was just laying low because I felt like they're watching me. And I've had several encounters since then with law enforcement, with federal police, and
That seems to be a thing in Texas.
Yeah.
More so than anywhere else.
yeah. Well, I got away from the national forest, and I think that's where, I'm still saying this, is that national forest is where they stash these Bigfoot and try to corral them up and keep them in one place because they're federally protected.
Do you think, I think it was, who was it? Roosevelt's the one that established the national parks?
Yes.
Do you think that was about Bigfoot?
I never thought about it. But yes, I think that's a distinct possibility because he is the only official lawmaker and a leader of our country that ever had a sighting.
Pretty weird.
That's very... I never would have thought that.
While you were living on Booger Hill, there was a hurricane.
Oh, yes.
Came in and did quite a bit of damage to your property.
Knocked power out.
Knocked the power out.
Yes.
One night, I'm on the phone with Vicky, and I had 2 different phone lines, and I'm sitting on the back patio talking to her, and the phone in the house is just ringing and ringing. I don't know what's going on. It's late at night. I go in there. I check my answering machine, I think it was at the time, and it's you. And you are frantic.
Yeah, I was very concerned.
With a lot of reason.
Mm-hmm.
What was going on that night?
Well, we didn't have any power. And when Booger Hill has no power, it is, can't see the hand in front of your face.
Yeah.
There are no street lights. There is nothing.
You're by yourself.
Yeah, I was by myself. And my phone, I felt like my phone barely worked.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to make sure someone was on the line just in case it got worse. But what happened was I heard a howl out in my yard. Of course, I wasn't recording. At that time, I'm not always recording anymore. And I wasn't recording, but it seemed like to me there was a strange guy, a strange Bigfoot in the neighborhood. He was a stranger. Yeah. And there was a strange group with him. Yeah. And they were right in my yard. I couldn't see them, but they were that call was so close. And I could hear a lot of movement. Yeah. And it was like, I was at my dining room window and I'm thinking, it's pitch dark, completely pitch dark. And I don't even think they knew I was in the house.
Which might have been a good thing.
But I was like, what are they going to do if they figure out I'm in the house? I don't know. It was weird because I felt like they were not from Texas. Huh. Or not from my area at all. And it was just a whole different feel of them that scared me. That maybe it was just a band of males that had been hung, I don't know, like a biker gang of Bigfoot kind of thing. Right. I just felt like I did not want to be alone. That was one night I really did not want to be alone out
Would
there.
you say that was the most frightening event you've had in Bigfoot? Is there one that stands out above the others?
Well, the time I was at Sulphur, and I was with Crystal and Tom, and we were down there by the nature building. Yeah. And we had started walking down that trail, and at the time, it was just pitch dark in there, but you could kind of see where you were going because it was like a white rock, And so anyway, we immediately, after going in on that trail, hit the wall. Yeah. Well, Crystal and Tom are trying to walk through the wall. They're, exaggerating like these big steps, and they're laughing, and they're trying to push through this invisible wall. It was really kind of comical. And I'm standing there in the dark, and I'm kind of listening to them, and all of a sudden, right next to me, I hear, just right by my ear, probably a foot away from my head, I hear like a stomach roll, kind of like somebody's bowels. And I thought, no, I didn't hear that. So I just stood there and I started to get a little scared. I could feel my body starting to tremble. And then I hear it again. And I'm thinking, that sucker is so close to me that I could probably reach out and touch him. But I couldn't make myself do it. Grab me a mess of hair right now. But I knew he was even closer the second time because it was even more pronounced. It was like a nervous stomach. Yeah. But it was up high. It was not level with my stomach. It was just above my head, kind of. And I thought, oh. And I just turned and I left Crystal and Tom. I totally abandoned them. And I remember I thought I wasn't going to be able to walk out of there because I was so scared that my legs were like rubber. Yeah. And I just could. And it was like, have you ever had those dreams where you can't run? Yes. It was like that.
Like you're running through wet concrete or something?
Yes. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. And then even when I got to the parking lot, I was still so shaky. And there was a lot of people sitting in the parking lot, with our group. And they were doing their own thing with night vision and everything. And I went and sat on a tailgate. And it was like I just felt like I was shaking all over. Wow. And, of course, here they come. And they go, why'd you run off and leave us? And I told them why. But that was perhaps my most terrifying moment because I was that close to him. There was another time I felt like I was asleep in my bed and I had my window open and it had just rained. So the water was dripping off the roof and it was landing right there under the window. Well, then I had the window open. I had to shade up everything, had my back to the window, and I hear something walk up. And then I don't hear the dripping anymore.
Oh, geez.
And I am just, I'm talking 2 feet from the screen. And I could not move. I couldn't move to turn around to see if it was there, what was there. You know, everybody goes, why didn't you turn around and look? I said, I just couldn't make my body move.
Yeah.
I just was like, please, just don't do anything, you know?
Don't reach in the window.
Yeah, I guess it was all the horror stories. Oh, they're going to rape you and kill you.
Yeah.
And I was pretty scared then. It was like I could hear my heart beating in my ears. I had one time where we were at Boykin Springs, and everybody was asleep. There was like maybe 4 or 5 other people there, and I could hear them all snoring. Everybody was snoring. So I know it wasn't them jacking with me.
Right.
The tent was on a slope, so I kept sliding down my cot into the tent wall, you know, and I would grab the cot, pull myself back up, and I'd slowly start sliding back down. Well, I got to the point where I was just nearly asleep, and I could feel my toe, and I would just push the side of the tent, you know, with my toe, and I was just messing around. Well, then all of a sudden I couldn't move it because something had a hold of it.
Had a hold of your toe?
Had a hold of my toe through the tent wall.
Oh, no.
And I kind of pulled it and it let go. And I said, something just had a hold of my toe, because there's a difference between the pressure of your toe into the tent wall and then having something pushing down on your toenail.
Yeah.
And I said, I got up there and I was in like a fetal position. And I never heard anything. But the next day, there were tracks leading right up to that corner of the tent out of the creek.
I would have never gone again if I were you.
Oh, yeah.
That would have been it for me.
No. That didn't really scare me. I don't know why. That should have scared me, but I had been in it a lot longer by then.
Yeah.
So that didn't scare me.
You also hosted a podcast for a long time.
Night Callers Bigfoot Radio.
Left it to your daughter,
Yes.
Lauren, who was on my 2nd episode of Bigfoot Crossroads, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have, I'm not going to put you on that spot and make you call them a favorite.
Uh-huh.
Do you have any guests that stood out that you enjoyed more than others? Or stories that you heard that you really liked?
No, because there were so many really great the Ohio Night Stalkers, I thought they were really doing something. Their recordings were incredible, but it was full of foul language, you know, and at the time, and you know, unless you've been out in the woods and had the crap scared out of you, you have some very colorful language.
You do.
I have to do some editing sometimes when I want to share. But they had a lot of colorful language, but they had a lot of stuff going on. They had some incredible recordings. And I don't so much remember the interview as I remember those recordings. I was so jealous. I just wanted to hang up my recorder and never record again because theirs were so good. And I don't even know if they're still a thing anymore.
Right.
But, yeah, I remember when we had Henry Franzoni on.
Yeah.
Well, you know, Henry gets way out there. I mean, it's like he has a very X-File, Men in Black type. And I remember Luke was our host. He was working with us then, and he was like in the private text going, this man's a nut. Ah! He was just going crazy. So I think because of that, I remember Henry Franzoni as being one of my favorite because Luke was just having a cow over that guy. Greg Yost.
Yeah.
I really liked Greg Yost, but then he kind of went in a different direction.
Yeah.
And that was the last show I ever did was Greg Yost.
Huh.
And he had always been just like Grassroots,
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, he had gotten with some kind of what I want to say paranormal type people, and then now all of a sudden he had a whole different attitude, and it was just like he came on, and I'm just like, oh no, that he was the last person I ever thought would sway that way, and he did.
I mean, you never know. You
Never know.
started out in the paranormal.
Yeah.
I started out interested in the paranormal. Then we went to Bigfoot.
Yes.
And back then, it just never crossed my mind to let the two meet or approach it with that outlook.
Well, because you're trying to be scientific.
Right. Even though we're not scientists.
Right. But we figured if anyone was going to ever take us credibly, we had to be credible.
But don't you think that might have been part of the problem and kind of still is, in the sense that you wanted that credibility because we were worried about what the people would say whenever we did present our evidence or tell them what happened.
Always worried what people would say.
And a lot of information, I think, got left out.
Yes.
Out of the fear of having to tell other people about it.
It got shelved.
And it shouldn't.
For a later time.
It shouldn't.
Yes.
So I just don't know. It's caused me at this point in life to kind of go back and relook at things.
Well, I can't tell you how many photographs I've taken that one area would be distorted.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what angle you took the picture from, because it was accidental at the time, but that particular area, that particular tree, would be distorted looking. Kind of like you're driving down the highway and see heat on the road. Sort of like that. And I would get that from time to time. But most of the time I didn't have a second or third picture to back it up.
Right.
I would have to assume that it was the camera or fog on the camera or something like that. But there were places that I would see that. And I'm thinking, why is there a heat wave, in that one particular area?
Yeah.
And we would go over there and check it out. Wouldn't feel any different. Felt the ground. It wasn't any hotter than anywhere else. But yet we'd go back and stand back and look, and it's doing that.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, what is that?
That was actually one of the first things that I ever heard in the Bigfoot world was, I don't remember who told me, but it was a Native American, and it was a Native American thing that you could kind of lay down on the ground and look, and you would see those fumes coming up from the Bigfoot's tracks.
Wow.
Yeah. And I never heard anybody else talk about it.
No, I've never heard that.
And I never made the association of that, and now I'm getting the goosebumps. I don't know. I mean, just matter of factly, you talked about Kelly earlier. Kelly's no longer with us.
No.
She fought a very hard fight against cancer. She was a very dear friend, a sister to both of us, our whole group. But one of the things that was just accepted among our group was, whatever you want to call it, psychic, gifted, whatever, Kelly had it.
She was very sensitive.
She knew information about people and things that had happened that there's absolutely no way she could have known.
Mm-hmm.
So we could accept that, but then the idea that there might be a Bigfoot out there that had those abilities was just, no, close the door on it immediately. That can't be possible.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons that I'm I got to open that door back up. Not that I've never experienced anything that causes me to believe that that's true, but I've heard lots of people make the claims. They might have
for
experienced
somebody
it.
like
Yeah.
Greg Yost to go that way.
Yeah.
That I think he was the one that really, because he was so the same as me, and then he went that way, and I'm thinking he would never go that way unless there was something to it. He
Yeah.
never would. And I don't stay in contact with him like I did, but it's so hard for me. It is so hard for me.
It should be.
It is so hard for me, even though I've been out there and I have experienced things and seen things. I recorded something outside my house saying my name in a very deep, growly voice.
And how would it know your name?
How would it know my name? Because nobody ever says my
But
name.
how do we know it's Bigfoot?
True. That's the scary part about that, because I discovered that on Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
It had been recorded like the 25th of October, and I finally got around to listening to it on Halloween. I said, well, Halloween to me, There's this voice, and I couldn't tell what it was saying, and so I shared it, and everybody come back and said, it's saying your name, and then you couldn't unhear that after that.
Right.
But yeah, what if it's not? And there are people that believe they are evil.
Yeah.
That they are evil beings.
Demons.
Nephilim or whatever.
Yeah.
And they truly believe that. And then there's some like Buddy Britt.
Yeah.
He was, TBRC. He was by the book. And then he all of a sudden said, I'm not doing this anymore. They're evil.
I'll never forget the day I got the phone call from him.
Mm-hmm.
I would talk to Buddy several times a week. There was about 2 weeks where I didn't hear from him. And then my phone rang one night, and it was him on the other end. And he said, I'm hanging it up. I'm never messing with these things again. They're evil. They're demons. I need to get back into church. They've got a hold on me. I don't know what's going on. Weird stuff is happening. And I'm just like, my mind's blown. This is not the same man I talked to 2 weeks ago. This isn't the man I know. What are you talking about? What happened? Wouldn't tell me. Wouldn't talk about it. He basically said, if you know what's good for you, you'll leave them alone too. Everybody should leave these things alone. And that was it.
Wow.
Several years later, he started going back out into the woods. I don't know what changed, but at that point in time, he sounded completely terrified and 100% certain these things are evil. I don't know.
Wow.
I mean, what do you say to somebody whenever
No, I know.
it just comes out of left field?
Yes.
And a lot of people have done that.
Well, it didn't deter me, obviously, because
No.
I don't believe they're demonic. And I've had a lot of people ask me, well, what do you think they are? Well, I can't even begin to say what I think they are. A relic human,
Yeah.
have they? I remember years ago I wrote "Voice of the Volcano." Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
About how they were the guardians of the earth. I still kind of believe that.
I mean, at this point, it's easier to tell people what they're not.
True.
And a lot of those things that people say, well, they might be this, they might be that. In my opinion, no, they're not that. There's more. There's always, no matter what category you try to put them in, there's stuff about them where they're more than that, though.
Absolutely.
Speaking of things that were taboo subjects, there was a time when the subject of Dogman was not popular. And people in the Bigfoot world kind of snubbed their nose at people that claimed to see a Dogman.
Right.
There was a time whenever you had an encounter, I believe, at Boykin Springs.
Yes, it was at the sawmill, actually.
A place where we had spent countless hours looking for Bigfoot, having what we believed to be Bigfoot encounters. People had sightings there. Tell me what happened.
Well, we were going to just go down there and do some looking around and everything during the day. A lot of people that had come to Boykin Springs in the past, we had never made it down to the sawmill to just check it out. It's a creepy place.
Very
it's an
creepy.
Old abandoned place. It's just a skeleton of the buildings that it used to be, and it's covered into graffiti and old vines, and it has just a really heavy feeling when you go there. You just have a heavy feeling. So we're walking down, it's quite a little trail down to the sawmill, and we come across some workers. We didn't notice a truck or anything. So apparently they had been dropped off. And there was like 2 or 3 of them, and they were reworking that footbridge. And they all 3 looked extremely nervous. We all know, we picked up on that.
Yeah.
They seemed extremely kind of pale and nervous. And we didn't think anything about it. Well, we did discuss it, like, wonder what's up with them, you know,
Right.
'cause they were
I mean,
acting
you're
kinda
in an
weird.
active Bigfoot area.
Yeah.
That's why you're there.
Yeah.
They're acting kind of funny.
They were, and I never realized that they were afraid. That's what was going on with them, but I didn't put that together because I'm just like, we're going to the sawmill, you know. And so we get down there, and of course we start hearing strange owl calls.
And this is daytime.
Daytime, 4 in the afternoon, something like that. So me and the girl stayed there, and she kind of wandered off, and I was sitting there leaned up against the log, and these guys the rest of them are all tromping through the woods chasing down this owl sound, and the owl keeps on making the sound, but it would just every once in a while make a kind of an odd barred owl sound. It was off, and it was moving, so they were following it. And about that time, I heard a bunch of these little birds. I call them chickadees. I'm not sure what kind of birds they are. They're just like a little bird, but they alert whenever something is around, and I could hear them really taking off, and they were moving, and so I was following their movement, the chickadees, and I followed them all the way around, and I said, something is moving through the woods there around me, and they're sounding off, and I might be able to catch it right here if it comes over here through this little clearing. And
Right.
it was wooded, and it was during the summer or late summer, so it was still a lot of high brush and grass and stuff. And I saw this little clearing, and I thought, well, I'll see it full on, but I didn't see it full on. I only saw the top half of it. But when it passed by, it was not what I was expecting. And I only saw it for a second, but it looked just like one of those dogs in Egypt. You know, one of the...
Yeah, the Nubis.
Nubis.
Yeah.
It even moved like a Nubis. It
Like
was
short hair and everything?
Yeah.
Huh.
Real straight, but it had this snout. But I don't remember seeing any ears.
Yeah.
I did not see any ears, but I just saw this protrusion in front. And it wasn't like a boxy protrusion. It was more pointed.
Yeah.
But it was like, what is that? Well, then it went behind the trees, and there was another little spot where I could see it again. But by then, and it was always in profile, and by then it was more like I could only see part of the snout, and it was more like I was seeing it from a different angle.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was. I thought, dog man? I don't know. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know what that was. It was so straight. I would think...
The posture.
Yeah, its posture. Its shoulders were really straight, and it walked stiffly, and It was like something
like
came
Bigfoot
alive
is
out
like-
of Egypt, you know?
Bigfoot's usually described as like hunched over,
Yeah, and more fluid moving.
Yeah.
And this thing was not that at all.
very rigid.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought, well, you know, I'd always heard the curse of the dog man. If you have a
Right.
sighting and
That's
you
it.
tell somebody, your whole life's going to go to shit.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of did. I
Yeah.
told about it, and my life did go to shit. I mean, it's like I lost like 8 friends in one day. My boyfriend left. It was just like all of a sudden I was by myself. Everybody was gone. And I just had like maybe 2 friends left, 3 friends, 4 friends, you know, out of 15. And I'm thinking, it had to have been a dog man, because what else has a curse like
That
that?
confirms it.
So, but in my neighbor, in Booger Hill, there's an old homestead just south of where I live, and there was a sighting there back in 1975 of a dog man. Well, this was the old home place.
Yeah.
The old home place, the old Phillips Castleberry home place. And that's at that time in 1975, there were people actually staying in that old house.
Wow.
And there was a pipeline there at the time, but it was all opened up. It wasn't grown up like it is now. It was all opened up. And this thing about 5 o'clock in the evening just come walking down the pipeline right by them.
Wow.
And they saw a big gray wolf-looking thing on 2 legs.
Wow.
And then another guy that lives west of Nacogdoches, they saw one. 2 guys on a motorcycle saw one crossing the road there.
Wow.
And that was more recently. That was probably in 2008. So I don't want to believe in Dogman, but I really don't, because werewolves just scare me. They're my thing that I'm always,
Right.
I don't like the movies. And but
I mean, you know what you saw,
I know what I saw, but I'm not sure if it was a dog man.
but you saw something.
I saw something, and I can say that there are snouted Bigfoot around the Caddo Lake area, and possibly even down there close to the Neches River.
You do hear reports of
Yeah.
them. Not very often,
Not very often.
but every now and then.
Yep.
And then that goes back, runs the gambit of Bigfoot history.
Yeah. Kind of having a baboon snout, where
Yeah.
this one had more of a longer, more pointed. I don't know what it was.
Scary. That's what it was.
Definitely. And if those guys, those construction guys that were working on that bridge saw something like that, or even, I never, when we got back up there, they were gone. They had been picked up. So never got to ask them or anything.
Spooky.
Yeah.
So now you are posting your audio recordings on YouTube?
Yes, but I have a huge collection. And my husband recently retired, and he is just, I just can't seem to get any more on there. But I have a few on there right now of things I've recorded, and it's called Squatchy Nights, Nites, audio. And it's on YouTube. And I coupled it with 4K video so that you can watch it at the same time. And I tried to make it as reminiscent of being there.
Yeah.
You know, the things that happen. You know, one of our favorite things to do still to this day, and we have a lot of success, is what we call car researching at night, where you do your recording from the car, you stay in the car, and you just kind of quietly visit, and maybe do a call or something, and they will come up. For some reason, I feel like they feel safer with you inside the car, and will come up even closer, belly crawl up, all kinds of things. So anyway, there's a lot. I have a lot of that kind of recording, and I just have all the recordings from the past, and some of them, when I was going through them from 20 years ago, I'm thinking, well, that's that's a coyote. You know, or, oh, that's a person shutting a car door. You know, all of a sudden, or moving a chair in the house or something, you realize it's not what you thought it was.
Right.
And so that eliminated probably about 10 of them. And I'm thinking, well, but then I realized that I did have some good recordings. They're just poor quality. And I'll just have to apologize in advance. I'll share them, but they're poor quality. You know, they've spent a lot of years going from computer to computer, and, you know, I lost them at one point, and Luke Gross had every one I'd ever sent him. So,
wow.
But I had a Babel recording that's gone forever. It was just a like that, you know, and I'm like, oh my God, I wish I still had that one. But yeah, there's quite a collection. So, but I would like people to go and like the page, subscribe to it, so that when and if I can get to putting more things up there, I will. It's just turning into squatching season, though, so it's going to be like...
You're going to be...
Yeah.
Going to be busy.
I start getting booked up. I'm already booking up, you know, so... It turns into like every 2 weeks I'm going somewhere.
Lori, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have enjoyed it.
I hope you have.
Absolutely. I am sure the listeners enjoyed it. It's been a long time coming. So good to see you.
So good to see you in person.
And for everybody out there listening, if you've had an encounter that you would like to share, maybe come on the air and share it, or just tell somebody about it that won't laugh in your face, feel free to email me at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.